evening, folks. Evening with Gelda program. Feel pleased to present you today Xanti Hondrou Hill. Xanti studied German literature and linguistics at the University of Stuttgart, journalism at the University of Hockenheim, and public relations management at CLAT WBS in Stuttgart. She has worked as a multilingual teacher, journalist, public relations manager, and poetess. She has lived in Greece, Germany, Holland, and Great Britain, and speaks several languages. Currently, she's living in Nelsa, in North Greece. She has organized in the past years many poetry events in cooperation with the local municipality and archaeological secretary of the prefecture of Imatias. In Germany, she worked as public relations manager for the Greek General Consulate in Stuttgart, designing, organizing, and executing multi-level campaign to improve the Greek fame in Germany. She's writing poetry since Reich School. Her poems have been published in the University newspaper of Stuttgart and newspapers like Stuttgart Zeitung. Additionally, she participated in anthologies in cooperation with the Greek Society of Writers in Germany, Kulturelles Menalgin, and the early anthology of the House of Writers in its Stuttgart Almanac. In Greece, she runs the cultural Facebook page dedicated to poetry and arts, organizes events, and is helping organize events like Poetry on Reels. And her poems are published in the anthology APIKO and in many social digital media pages. She's currently working as public relations consultant for a European art platform. Wow, it's a great bio. Dearest poetess, come on to our interview. Dear Xanti, when was poetry present in your life?
This first question is actually quite interesting because poetry was very early present in my life, but I didn't recognize that because I was very little. So my grandmother would, every morning when she would serve breakfast, take a little piece from the calendar, and on the back of that would be a poem, and she would read that to me. Of course, I wasn't aware that this would be very important for me later on. So this is a nice memory which I have from her and reading the poems.
In your opinion, is poetry the most beautiful way to expand universal literature?
I certainly think that poetry is the highest form of literature, and having the experience that we're all looking for inspiration in poetry which was there before us, I think it's gonna be everlasting, because at some point we might get stuck and then have no inspiration for a while, but then after a while it comes back to us and it floods us with happiness, and we continue writing. So this is ever expanding. It doesn't stop.
Which poetic style do you prefer to write?
I used to write in a very open style and without rhythm and rhyme, but I found lately that I can actually rhyme in English with great ease. So I have just started to expand the way I'm writing. So I don't really know where it's going to take me, and it's a beautiful journey of exploring.
Please cite an ancient and a contemporary poet who inspires you the most in the construction of your poetry.
This question is actually quite tricky, because I think that whatever you read, you take a little bit with them. So when I was at school, in Greek school, you read the tragic masters of Greek tragedy. So I have read Oedipus, I have read Antigone, and of course with my children in the lower classes of gymnasium, we read Homer, we read the Ilias, and this, you take from everything you read, you take a little bit with you. And even sometimes when you don't realize that you're taking it, it sticks with you, and then it comes to the surface with one or the other way. Now, as far as recent poets regard, contemporary ones, I was very inspired by the German poet Johannes Poetic, who was not just an inspirational poet, but he also was inspirational in the way he gave back to the society of poets, because he was the one who gave his house, which was in the middle of town, for the poets, so that they could come and stay there, and they would have been paid for half a year all their expenses to create poetry. So this is quite an impressive person to have actually met and have discussed poetry with. And I was inspired a lot by him on the way he was writing. Very simple and very structured. But as I said before, from every poet you meet, from everything you read, you get a little bit of inspiration. So even the youngest poets today sometimes have a really strong way of expressing, and if this sort of expression touches you, you have a little bit already taken on from them, and this is quite inspiring for me.
Which poets from social media do you usually follow, their writers and jobs?
Ooh, platforms. Well, you know that there are really a lot of platforms out there, and I am actually following 180 different ones on poetry. So there are many on Greek poetry, and there are many blogs on Greek poetry, and there's also, of course, a lot in English and in German and in other languages too. So I follow around 180. I can't tell you which ones I read, because I read whatever springs up on poems on a daily basis. I think I must be reading more than 100 poems a day sometimes. Of course, I like it, and yeah, I can't tell you which ones, because there are so many, and some of them are very inspiring, and I'm also taking part in lots of poetic events all over the world, in America, in England, in India, and this is also quite interesting to see that in different countries you have different sort of styles of writing, which is also quite interesting. For instance, in Greece we don't have the rhyme that much. It's not a style which is contemporary and modern, but you can actually see that in America it's quite common, or in Great Britain it is very welcomed to rhyme. So this mixture is quite interesting for me.
In your point of view, does a poet need to have academic education, or is it possible to write empirically?
Wow, this is a very interesting question, because actually during my studies there was a seminar which was teaching you how to write poetry, but I never managed once to write poetry in this seminar. So I think for many people it's inspiration. So whatever comes to you, whatever is your theme, which is finding you, and this is the way they follow. So even though you can study poetry, there are actually very few schools that you can go to where they teach poetry. I think there is one in England now. It's an open university, and you can study how to put a proper poem together. But the rest of us, even though we have studied, I think we're doing it empirically and following our sensitivity and the theme which is actually ours. So,
what advice would you like to give to those that are starting in the field of poetry?
well, for people who want to write, I think the most important advice is to write on a daily basis. If it's a little post on Facebook, if it's a little start of story or a poem or just a writing exercise, if you want to write, you need to write. And inspiration is everywhere. It could be in nature, it could be in relationships, it could be in problems, it could be in a reflection of the water. It could be anything and everything. It could be crossing the road and finding inspiration. So inspiration is everywhere. And also reading, because reading is the opposite of writing. So when experienced poets read, they get inspiration just by reading. So it's very important to read good poetry, poetry which has been known everywhere, ancient poetry, different styles of poetry, haikus, epic poems, even new styles of poetry which are coming out every so often. So try and experiment and to see which way you like to express yourself, or which is the easiest way for you to put something together which is coming along nicely, because it is experience. It is the daily experience which makes it easier to write the more you write.
And now, concluding our moment interview, if you don't mind, could you recite a poem of yours for all of us now?
I would like to read a poem which was just published in the anthology Mediterranean Waves and Other Waves by Ashraf Abul Yazid Dali. He is in Egypt and is doing very, very inspirational stuff for poetry and journalism. The title of the poem is Mediterranean Waves, and it has been written about experiences in the summertime on a Greek island. Mediterranean Waves. 3 blue poets fill our life. One singing the blue from the sky, the other the waves of the sea, and the third whispers the wisdom of the wind. No matter to which shores the poem takes us, with which clouds we want to travel, with the wave of the blue scarf of Murica, or the white sail of a Greek sailing boat, the wing of a plane, there is always the wisdom of the wind to carry us, to reach the shores of dreams with flowers, pebbles, and seashells as treasures, the nights where we talked at blue tables with friends or on the phone miles away, listening to the tide, the fun we shared traveling in a rental car without lights on an island, looking to avoid a monastery and ending up spending the day there in the arms of a saint, bringing with us healing oils and sacred water. The paintings we discovered in the small museum, in our faces and on the street corners looking down to the sea, feeding a foreign hungry artist at the little coffee shop by the seaside. We didn't exchange letters and alphabets like our ancestors, didn't care if the numbers were Arabic or Greek, didn't even try to find common ground because 3 blue poets, a painter and a musician, filled our life with the waves of the Mediterranean. Thank you very much for having me. I hope you had fun with me as much as I did talking about it. Thank you, Gelda.
Wow! I'm grateful for you for have shared your thoughts, your inspiration, your works and your words through your beautiful poesy. Thank you so very much.
Gelda, and I want to thank you very much for having me and talking about poetry. I feel very humbled and very honored to be today with you. Thank you. Thank you.
And you guys, you and I have a meeting the next Sunday, okay? See you there. Bye-bye.